Yes, talking about for my good. Well, we have something good for you. Coming up right now. Woohoo! My brother from another mother. Got two of them right here. Talking about, well, I'll let them introduce themselves. Some of you may know them. Some of you may have heard of them. But here they are. Start opening up with Pastor Chuck Walton.
KROV, how you doing? This is Pastor Chuck Walton. It's good to be here this morning. Thank you, Elder, for the invite. Some of you may be right now getting ready for your Sunday morning, or you're just relaxing. But today we have in the studio with me someone that you may have heard here on KROV before, or this may be your first time listening in. But I have with me Mr. Gilbert Granados. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. It's great to be in the house with you, as well as KROV and James and all his crew. I can't wait. I'm excited.
Yeah. It's a good time to be in the studio this morning. Here in San Antonio, the weather is hot, and I think what we got to discuss today is going to be very hot as well. I think, when it comes to leadership, everyone has so many different experiences or thought processes when it comes to that. And I think today what we're going to discuss may open up a little thought process for other people, and may get them to challenge themselves on how they view leadership or how they're handling leadership of their own, either in the secular world or maybe in the Christian setting, or even in their home. And so let's talk about that a little bit. But before we go there, Gilbert, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself? That way they know that you can talk about this subject that we're talking about.
Well, I tell you, I'm an old guy, but not in my mind. I'm young. I'm still green and growing. I'm not ripe and rotting. And from that standpoint is I've been, since 2014, I've been learning John Maxwell content. And hopefully some of you guys, if you've not heard of John Maxwell, he's written over 150 books. Many of his books are $1 million type selling. And when you look on a leadership standpoint, he's very strong. And what's so unique though, Chuck, is he comes from a faith-based background.
Right.
And once upon a time, he had one of the top 10 largest churches in all of the United States. And so obviously he's still into the faith base, but more on a huge way worldwide is on leadership. So Google John Maxwell if you guys have not heard of him. If you've not read any of his books, get them. Get on Minute with Maxwell, and I definitely believe he'll serve and add value to you in a huge way.
So talking about that real quick, and when it goes to yourself, in order to be a certified team member, you had to go through some training, go through some things. So leadership is not something that you just one day woke up and say, hey, I want to talk to people about leadership. It's something that you have put some time and some effort in learning, correct?
Most definitely, yes, sir. So leadership is you got to lead yourselves. And so I was at a standpoint I really wanted to get a little bit more deeper into leadership, and had no idea who John Maxwell was. And as I started going into it more of what I needed, which is leadership. And I think all of us need to grow as a leader. I don't think leadership or growth ever stops. Just like reading the Bible, we get deeper and deeper and deeper, and that becomes more of a relationship with God. And leadership is the same way. Leadership is our daily habits, is what we do, how we prepare, being professionally fit. And so most definitely leadership is the forefront of everything we do. We got to lead ourselves first before we lead somebody else. And you can't give you don't have.
Wow. So basically you're saying leadership doesn't start when you get a title. It's an everyday, and by you saying that, I mean, it does start with us. I mean, how can you lead others if you can't lead, yourself?
Yes.
I mean, the Bible even talks about, how can a man lead, a church, or how can we go out and do anything else if I don't take care of home first? So that's the same situation. And how can we lead others if we're not taking the proper steps to lead ourselves and have, what can I say, some type of routine or commitment to even ourselves, how can we commit to the lifestyle of other people? Wow, that's pretty awesome. So we got to talking a little bit, and I think when we got to talking, I brought up a good point to you about, now we hear a lot of things about influencers. Oh, this person is an influencer. That, you know, I have 2 young boys, and they're big YouTubers, right? And so a lot of things we see on YouTube is these folks trying to influence.
Right.
It's influence, not necessarily leadership, but it's, you know, it's influence. But so that got us talking a little bit and say, hey, we may need to talk about this a little bit today. So let's get into a little bit about, you know, influence versus leadership, or influential leadership. And so in order to get started here, I think I want to go to a scripture real quick, just so we still have the faith part about it on this. And that's Matthew 28:19, and where it says, therefore go and make disciples of all nations, right? And I'm just going to stop right there, because Jesus gave the church, and he gave the disciples a charge or a assignment, and that was to go and make disciples, to be an influence. So they had the title of disciples, or they had the title of manager, or the title of CEO, or the title of pastor, or the title of husband or father or mother. They had the title, but they also had a responsibility, which to go and duplicate, to go to make influence. So do you feel that being a leader, that having influence is something that's very important, or do you think you can lead without having influence? What are your thoughts on that a little bit?
Yeah, so on a leadership standpoint, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And it could be, you could be a leader, and if you have nobody following you, you have no influence. So how can you really be an influencer if nobody's following you? So leadership can be good and bad.
Right.
It can be good and bad. And obviously, as we look at leadership, is everything rises and falls on leadership. Nothing more, nothing less. Nothing more, nothing less. And so, on a leadership standpoint, you're looking at on relationships, personal and professional. Personal, that's ongoing. It's ongoing. It's every day. 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 And we know, we read the Bible, or we read a good book, and we may read a good book and we put it back on the shelf. Where if we read a good book and we learn something, and then we live it, and then we lead somebody else, we teach somebody else, that now is, we're starting to equip, we're starting to multiply, we're starting to add value to people, serving them. And that could be on a family standpoint. I'm tested every day. I would think all of us are tested every day. It is to stay the course, and because there's always different things that are going on, and knowing if the fork in the road is, on a leadership standpoint, is where am I really trying to go, and staying that course. And that's a daily form of leadership.
Okay. And so, you know, when we started talking about this, I had to go and see what our friend, the World Wide Web, had to say about influencers, right, and leadership. And so some of the things that I picked up, which really was interesting, I'm gonna read just a little bit, and just to see your thoughts, and those who are listening. I mean, if you have any thoughts or questions on leadership, you can call in. Our number is 210-785-9227. But this is what I found, and was very interesting. It said, influencers lead ideas, leaders lead people. Influencers come up with ideas no one ever thought of before. Leaders figure out how to formalize those ideas and mobilize teams to turn those ideas into reality. What do you think about that? I mean, so talking about what we said before, I mean, we both feel that in order to be a leader, you have to be able to have influence. But I feel sometimes that this I want to call it the new generation, because it's not just a generational thing. I think it's more of a new thought process, is that I don't necessarily have to be a leader to influence, which I feel is correct. I feel that you don't necessarily have to have a title to be an influence, to have influence. But to say that I'm a leader and I don't bring influence, I feel is where it becomes a draw in the sand sort of thing. And so here it says, influencer leads ideas, leaders lead people, right?
Good.
Influencers come up with ideas no one's ever thought of before. But leaders figure out how to formalize those ideas and mobilize teams to turn those ideas into reality. What do you got to say on that?
So that's so interesting. So you said an influencer has an idea, but the leader knows the way. So it got the idea, goes the way, and then shows the way. So that's now is you become a leader that is influencing people, and so that formula right there is the leader knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. And that's a powerful formula right there in helping to decide is, okay, I've got to influence people. I got to serve and add value to people. I've got to grow myself so I can add value to people. And that's on a personal and a professional standpoint. On a personal standpoint, we could be growing personally, but let's say on a leader owning a business or leading people in a unit or co-workers, that's being professionally fit. That's growing, serving, adding value. That's part of the daily. What goes on is influencing people. There's going to be times that you are, no, I don't agree, but I got to get in alignment. You may not agree because the company says you need to do more. You may not agree with it, but in alignment, you're helping and serving and adding value to yourself, but also to your fellow employees that you work with, or your co-workers that you work with, or with your direct reports to report to you. It's one of those. It's just understanding. It just, the leader knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. Wow. It just gotta look at it that way, because otherwise we become what? Fear and procrastination.
Right.
Fear and procrastination just puts you, I'm just not gonna do it today. But what happens if tomorrow is the same way? I'm not gonna do it today. I'm not gonna do it tomorrow, and then a week, and just staying with a good inner circle, good mentoring, and reading good books definitely help you to grow. That definitely helps you to get back on track, to stay the course, because life is going to give us obstacles.
Wow. And you said a lot of great things there, and they got my mind, going a little bit. And I know we want to keep this also in a setting of the church or Christianity, and because we brought up scripture. One thing that I think about is that's important is the title, of course, is I'm a Christian. So Christian is a title, right? But there's also an importance of us, having to bring influence. It's no good for me to have the title and not have the responsibility of like you said, having that influence in the realm of what I've been given the title over, or the space. And so as a Christian, the space that I've been given is the world, right? I've been given this world to make impact, to make disciples. It said all nations. That means the world, all nations. So I have to be able to see that it's not just about my own walk or my own life, but it's also about those that I've come in contact with, those that God has allowed me to see on a day-to-day basis, or to come in contact with in the grocery store, in the workplace, in the school, or in the gym. And so that is something that is very important that we have to understand. It doesn't stop with us, right? As a believer, the moment that I have made that decision to follow God and to follow Christ, it does not stop with me. It's a continuation. So the thing as far as an influencer
Form
or
of
a
leadership, it's influence, nothing more, nothing less, and everything rises and falls on leadership. It's a simple statements, but it's more just understanding that, because as we're married, and we're doing with, we can't get along. It's servant leadership is if you're upset, you may be upset because of others, but you've got to really learn how to find common ground, learn how to have relationships, and that requires more energy. It requires much more energy in relationships. It's a thing that it is an ongoing of every day, because then you're dealing with staying married, relationships with your kids, or high retention with employees, culture, all of that, and that requires a different skill set, a different set of energy.
Yeah. I just saw a good post because we're also on Facebook Live, and this is from a leader that I served under many years ago as a teenager. I've been able to be fortunate to serve in leadership, not only in the home, in the church, in the workplace, in sports, and in certain other places. And I just want to share what he said, because he taught me a lot about being a leader to my peers. In high school, I was the drum major of a band, and we had, over 200 band members that was on that team. And so he said, a good leader is a good follower. A good leader is a servant of those who choose to follow him or her. People are drawn to what you do and not what you say. So as we're thinking about this, and this, servant leadership is what he's saying. It's important to understand, in order to lead, you must know how to follow, because how can you teach someone else to follow if you don't know how to follow yourself? And in doing that, people have to see what you do, not just hear what you do. And one thing, as I was thinking about this as well, again going back to our good friend the World Wide Web, I found some other things, and I just want to read these real quick, because it's just very interesting of what I just always love to hear what people have to say about different things. This says, leadership inherently suggests influence. If you're a leader, you are charged to guide and impact outcomes. Influence can result in change, affecting outcomes without necessarily having leadership. A person can be very influential without a leadership title. You can also be an ineffective leader who does not influence. Great leaders, however, are influencing for positive results. So when I think about that, and the only reason why I bring this up is you don't necessarily have to have a leadership role to be an influencer, but you still can affect leadership. You don't have to have the title, you don't have to have the position, but you still can affect change. You still can influence a neighborhood or a community or a office or a team or a band or whatever the case may be. You can still have that influence without being a minister or a pastor or have some title in the church. You can still bring influence even in that aspect. And so I think it's just sometimes we feel that in order to be a leader, you have to first get the position or first get the title.
No, the title is the lowest form of leadership. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Leadership has nothing to do with title.
Wow. And you mentioned to me when we talked a little bit earlier about an acronym, and I think it was
REAL.
Real, right? And leadership is just that, being real. But go ahead and talk through that acronym real quick.
You bet. So REAL, that's real success. And it starts off with R is relationships.
Wow. Can we just stop there real quick then?
You bet.
Because we may have to hit each one of those individually. So relationships. So in order for me to be an effective influence leader, I have to have relationships with those that I lead, but then also with those that may help me in being influential or being that leader. Go ahead, talk. more about that.
So relationships requires a lot of energy. Relationship building is critical in culture, critical in marriage, critical with neighbors, critical with your co-workers, personally and professionally. So in a relationship standpoint, understand it. That's where it all starts, is our ability to be able to keep relationships. And like you mentioned, you were in the band, right?
Right.
And an individual that a leader that you well respect, he made a comment, and I love his comment there, and it's so true. It's not what you say, it's what you do.
Wow.
And through time, somebody starts seeing is that person is consistent. They're consistent. They're disciplined. They know the way, they go the way, and they show the way.
Wow.
They don't just start with know the way. You know, and so relationships is a huge part. Everybody's paying attention, and so relationships is the start of real success.
Wow. And then let's talk about the E. What does the E?
The E is equipping, and that is a powerful word right there, equipping, because equipping is you got to equip yourself, which is you grow, but where you multiply, where people start to. You have huge impact and influences when you're equipping others and you're growing others, and others are successful. And I love what you mentioned earlier about a church, a nonprofit, is when you are a leader and you're leading individuals that are volunteering,
right,
that requires a special skill set of understanding how to lead volunteers. And so I know you have some individuals in the audience with you on that. And so equipping others, if they're growing, if they're becoming closer with a relationship with God, if they're becoming a better person, that's equipping others.
Right.
And so if it's in the business force, if they're successful, if they're making money, right? If they're growing as a person to become better personally and professionally, that's equipping. So equipping requires to grow other people.
Wow. That's true, and that's good. And equipping actually requires some investment too. I mean, because you're investing, time. Sometimes you're investing resources as far as money, and so I think that's a huge one. Let's talk about the A.
Yes, sir. So A is attitude. A is attitude, and I tell you, attitude is how we show up. Is how we show up in good times and bad times, in great times. It's just how we show up. So attitude, as we know, it requires it's got to be intentional.
Wow.
Good attitude's got to be intentional. It's got to be abundance mindset.
Wow.
Abundance mindset is something's going to happen, but you know what? It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. That attitude. How do we prepare? Do we plug in energy? Plug in energy to stay with the right attitude. And so that right there is part of real success. Is A is attitude.
Wow. And let's wrap up with the L. What does the L stand
for? And the L of real success is leadership. And leadership is the strength right there is everything rises and falls on leadership. Nothing more, nothing less. And leadership is the core of everything we do. It's our daily habits. It's the discipline of what we do. How we show up. How we show up is what we say and what we do. That's part of leadership. Do we have influence? And so in real success, if you use that, R is relationship, E is equipping, A is attitude, and L is leadership, you'll have real success personally and professionally. Now, it doesn't happen overnight. It's something that has to be worked and fertilized. You plant a seed, you got to fertilize it, you got to put water, you got to nutrients, just like relationships. It's all that's part of just giving you a little bit of what I've learned is real success is those letters right there. R, relationships, E, equipping, A is attitude, and L is leadership.
Wow. And so as we're getting ready to come to a close, I just wanted to share this real quick. Leadership is something that is definitely important in every aspect of our life. Like you said earlier, you are a leader, one, of yourself. And so this is applicable to everybody then. This segment here is not just applicable to those who have a title or those who may be fathers or wives or husbands or whatever. If you are live right now and you hear our voice or you see us on this screen here, it applies to you. And so in order to have success, real success, when it comes to leadership over your life, over the things that you've been given charge to, over the things you have responsibility to, you have to establish that relationship, equipping attitude and displaying that leadership is very important to the everyday life. And so as we're getting ready to close, because our time is up, I just want to thank you for coming out and sharing with everyone. I thank you, those who are listening, either on the internet or by Facebook. We just want you to know that God has called all of us to have influence and called all of us to have a lifestyle of leadership, servant leadership, influential leadership. And so just take a little bit of what we talked about today and do a self-assessment, see where you are, and never stop growing, never stop developing, because the moment you do, you begin to die. And God has not caused us to die, He causes us to live. And so as we get done today, I just want to thank you again, brother, for coming out and sharing with us for a little bit. And Elder, thank you for having us on today, and we'll go from here.
Thanks to crew.
Hey, that worked out good.